Hello and welcome to another Solve SaaSOps Live virtual event. This is actually episode 24, almost like we've had 2 years of this, but we've had some great conversations along the way. And thinking back to what we used to do, had me thinking of those simpler times where we used to just order a bunch of laptops. They'd turn up on a pallet, maybe. If you were large enough, you'd stack them in a closet or in the corner of the server room. And as new people came into the office and joined, you'd get one of those laptops out. You'd deploy it using whatever method you had. Maybe it was just a vanilla version of Windows, and you'd install some applications, or you might have something, an imaging platform that you were using, and then you'd hand it to the person as they came into your office on that first Monday of them starting a new job. But obviously, COVID, remote work, and now the continued hybrid work has made us have to think how we change that. Required us to adopt new ways and new technologies to do it. And that made me think, how should we be doing it? How are other people doing it? And has anybody written a blog post about it that we could hand off to and discuss? So who here may or may not have written about it, would like to start the discussion?
I may have written a few words about it.
Excellent.
It's almost like this was a topic chosen based on a blog that I wrote. Yeah, I mean, I think we all can definitely empathize with a lot of the weirdness that happened going remote. I think I've like zero touch anything is the dream, and zero touch provisioning definitely for hardware. And, you know, like you had mentioned, we previously were shipping laptops to the office. We were, installing a few things, setting up user accounts, making sure that updates were applied. But then we all went remote. Now people were getting computers shipped to their houses. People were asking for locked cabinets because they were nervous about having all the computers in their houses, wherever they were. So that was an interesting thing to tackle. So it accelerated for us finding like a true zero touch solution for hardware provisioning. I would say like we were 95% of the way there. And then this was the last push. So now we actually set up a buy hold agreement with our supplier. We personally use CDW, but I think you could probably do it with whomever you do business with. So we just basically said, hey, we want you to hold on to a bunch of these machines for us in your warehouse. And then when we need them, we'll just drop ship them to our employees for upgrades or for new hires. And we were able to get the account piece somewhat automated by using Jamf Connect for the Mac fleet. And what that does is it kind of syncs to our identity provider. We use Okta. So someone will open their laptop, type in their Okta username and password, and it'll sync to their local computer account password. And then they're off to the races. And we also implemented a tool called Automox, which does like OS and third-party patching this year, which has automated all of the like patching policies and made us much more compliant, which is also good. And then on the Windows end, we have been using Intune Autopilot for those. So they can also likewise just like, and since we have Office 365 behind Okta, they also just use their Okta credentials. So that's what we're doing. I'm sure we can improve our process. I would love to hear from everyone else on what they're doing and get some ideas. If anyone wants to share. Does Rose want to share?
I don't want to share. I want to ask you a question, Justine. So you have a different flow for Windows and Mac. Does that annoy you?
Yeah. But there's nothing I can do about
it. Is there not? There's not anything you can do about it?
I mean, I guess I could force everyone to use the same computer, but that seems unkind.
There are platforms that will do Mac and Windows in the same, suite of products. I have a question. Obviously, you've got best of breed. Probably Jamf on the Mac side and Intune on the Windows side. What was the need for this, or what was the thought about having the separate program to do the patching? Because obviously Intune can do patching and Jamf can do patching.
Yes.
Did it make it easier having a single pane of glass for that security?
Yeah, exactly. Part of it is having the one place to go to see everything and be able to provide really easy reports for our compliance team if they request them. And it's a little bit of a more user-friendly experience when doing the patching policies from Automox. So what we noticed when forcing it from Jamf is it's kind of like, you could do it, but then like just at some point your computer will just reboot, when you force it. And it's fine if that's what you choose to do. But with Automox, we have a little bit more flexibility in deciding the different policies that are running for the OS patches versus some third-party softwares. Like, for example, Slack updating. I don't really care if someone's Slack has to close and reopen during the middle of the day. So we might want to do that like daily. But that's not necessarily something that we would do for the OS stuff. So it just gave us a little bit more flexibility, I think.
Pause for questions. Any other? Who else is doing? I've got another question while people are thinking. Obviously, you were doing buy to hold. How did that work during the real height of hardware shortages last year and even earlier on this year, where lead times were in months, not weeks?
Yep. So we actually only implemented the buy hold like this past month or so. This was our first time doing it. During the height of the shortages, we were just ordering a bunch of computers, and like Dennis on my team had like 30 computers in his house, and he was very uncomfortable with it.
Right. Yeah. See, it gets very difficult when you have a very distributed workforce that can't easily get into the office, or there might be restrictions for people going into the office. In our organization, we could still go into the office, and people would go in periodically, pick up 3 or 4 laptops, go home, build them, ship them out. But it is a very tedious process, and it does mean that there instead of it being zero touch, there is multi-touch.
And also it kind of depends on your building too, like where your office is. Not every building has a package department, so they might just be dumping stuff in the hallway, and you might not necessarily want 50 laptops to just be sitting outside your office door that anyone could come up and grab.
Yes, yeah. For us, it did help being in 3 World Trade, which has, an approved delivery process, a mail room, the whole kit and caboodle. But yeah, if you're a smaller office, I've seen many a picture from Amazon of stuff being just dumped on the front doorstep.
That's very interesting to know that CDW will do that buy hold. We work with Dell, and Dell refuses to do that. And our lead time with Dell can sometimes be a month to 2 months. And sometimes we're getting 1 week notice to 2 weeks notice before a user actually starts. So basically we're having to keep on premise 2 machines at any point in time to deal with those on-demand ones, and then try to get them replaced, but still have a couple of spare machines that are maybe older and not brand new. But it doesn't give us that capability of drop shipping to a person that might start in the US or might start in Canada. So that's really good to know that CDW, because CDW is one of our retailers that we do buy stuff from once in a while, but it's good to know that they even do that.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to, I don't think any of the hardware manufacturers, I'm sure it's the same for HP, Lenovo, Dell, would want to get involved in drop shipping. But there is, it's I guess that potentially it could be additional costs for utilizing a reseller, or service charges. They charge you for that additional holding of the material.
Can't be as bad as FedEx. Or it could be the same as FedEx, in which case it's an even trade.
Yeah.
Locations are people dealing with, like, or countries or states how many, like, how big is are your standard complexities?
That's true. Yeah, if you abstract outside of the United States, like shipping gets real complicated.
So we actually deal with that pretty regularly, and we do leverage CDW beyond just domestically. That's actually where we started doing the buy hold before we've even done any of that in the United States. So we are lucky that I can access the office here in the middle of nowhere, Montana. So I kind of have a pile of stock. Dax has a pile in the closet behind him, but a much smaller pile than my giant pile in office, because it doesn't matter where I put it now because there's hardly anybody in the office. But CDW internationally, they have a UK warehouse that used to service all of the EU, and now they have a separate one for the EU too. And that can be leveraged internationally also. So you can have them go from there to somewhere else, down to EMEA, somewhere else in EMEA, or just going into, I don't know if we ever really went into Africa, maybe, something like that. But APAC can be leveraged through that too, and all that.
Because we are dealing with 7 countries, hiring for an 8th. And one of which is Egypt. So
Egypt is really hard to get equipment into.
And we decided standardized device. So you can get anything on a Chrome OS as long as it's higher than an i5 and 16 gigs of RAM. Anything else, I don't care. And we decided, hey, people can enroll themselves. They shouldn't. That's where that works. Like the shortcut, type in your password once and then type it again, and the device is managed. So that's what we are doing, which makes a lot of our work easy. And we give people cards or virtual cards to order online. So, or even you can even put it as in Google Pay or Apple Pay, these cards, and then go and buy them in store. That's what we leverage where we don't have direct access to distribution or CDW or similar locations.
I wonder, does that count as zero-touch deployment? It seems like it would to me. If you could provide a way for your users to purchase a laptop, and then also provide a way for them to sign in and enroll themselves, and it would, install your full suite of things. Doesn't that count as zero touch?
Well, Chrome OS does have.
I don't even touch it once. It's -1.
Yeah, if you remove it all, then you're less than zero touch. Yeah.
But some of the challenges that I've had with the users enrolling Chromebooks themselves, that they forget to either click on enterprise enrollment on the sign-in screen, or they forget that, I have to do Control-Alt-E before, and then they happen to sign in with their Gmail account, and then Gmail account becomes the device owner. So something we've been doing for some of our larger customers, both north and south of the border, is Chrome OS Zero Touch enrollment, as well as the buy and hold with working with some of the different distributors. So initially, before Zero Touch for Chrome OS became widely available, I was going to one of the IT guys' house, so they were manually enrolling the devices, or we had initially talked about doing white glove enrollment with one of the distributors, and then once Zero Touch enrollment became available, we worked with a different distributor that could do it, and then we started using that instead, and then doing buy and hold for some of the distributors.
There's certainly that complexity that people forget to enroll it, and then you have to power wash it again.
And the white glove too, because not every distributor can do it, is that just because they can do white glove doesn't mean that every warehouse can do it. So they have to still ship it to a centralized warehouse. It could be, Midwest, some of West Coast. So like their stock may be distributed, but still they need to ship it to a centralized location where they may not necessarily
in order to have it enrolled.
Yes.
And if you're looking into it as I know this will be near and dear to Dominic's heart, but if you're looking into it as a way to like lower your climate impact, right, from shipping multiple times, then you haven't done anything if your distributor is shipping it to a centralized location.
So there's a couple of things that are adding to the complexity of this, and I'm obviously Dominic has the simplicity because he's telling people to use requiring his employees to use Chrome OS, but he has the complexity because it's different locations. And then Justine has it's slightly easier because only dealing with North America, which is easier, but then dealing with multiple OSs. So what's the easier thing to tackle? Standardize on the OS, or say to people in, all those 7 countries, we only do zero touch in one because of the shipping logistical capabilities.
Depends on your job.
My opinion, Colin, is on multiple OSs is like, I don't really feel like we could ever force our users into pigeonhole them into just saying only use Windows. In my opinion, it's like giving an electrician a flat, like a butter knife to do his job. It's like, sure, he can do it, but he's better with the tools that he knows how to use or they know how to use. And we've always found that some people are extremely comfortable on one platform or the other. And we do ask when they join the organization, which platform they would prefer. I want to say, though, that has always made our job difficult as IT staff to try and find things that are platform agnostic. When we went to Cisco as our phone system, trying to find a soft client for the phone that was the same across both platforms. And we found one that looked exactly like the actual Cisco phone and functioned exactly like the phone and no features lost. But we ended up having to go with Jabber because Jabber was the only client that was cross-platform. So I would really love to have the capability of just saying Windows or Mac only. But I really feel like in this bring your own device world, people are kind of getting used to being able to pick their own devices and even bringing their own.
Well, and when you add Chrome OS into that, my previous employer was a Chrome OS, Mac, and Windows shop. And we even had some Linux. And so like when you add all of them together, it gets even more complicated, right? Because you're trying to get at least close to a similar experience on all of them, but it's just not possible all the time. That's where like stuff like, Google's progressive web app sort of thing is, I think, very promising because ideally it will allow us to have very, very similar experiences across a very wide variety of operating systems.
Yeah, luckily I don't have to deal with Chrome OS here. My team lead runs a Chrome OS machine, but we don't manage it at all. He's just using it to see what possibilities it can do. I'm glad we don't have to touch Chrome OS.
I love Chrome OS. I would happily work for an employer that was Google Workspace and wanted to have managed Chrome OS. We have them, not a huge amount, but we have some. It's great for being able to push out policies to them, and something as simple as getting people connected to the Wi-Fi. You can push all of those credentials out. I think that's probably as zero touch as you can get, but obviously it does mean that you're locked into the tools that you can run on in the browser or using Parallels to run a Windows machine, but then you have to manage that Windows, image on that device. So then you're back to square one, and there's limited Linux centralized management on Chrome OS at the moment through Google Enterprise, unfortunately.
My biggest dream has been, honestly, now that I've seen Google doing Stadia and basically do 4K, 60 frames per second, not perfectly, but I really feel like they're setting this up to create OS in the cloud, like virtual machines that you can just use your Chrome OS to launch basically whatever platform it is that you want to use, and you leave that machine, go to another one, you just pick up where you left off. And it's going to be basically machines are going to turn back into dumb terminals, thin clients, and you just use it to log into the client service provider of your choice to bring your operating system down to that machine.
You just beat me by 2 seconds. I was just about to drop that VDI bomb, and I was just like, infrastructure is getting powerful enough, albeit expensive. But is it more expensive than actually providing machines out to everybody else? User comfort goes haywire whenever we bring this up. People are like, "No, I want my own machine." That's not what they sound like. I'm being very emulative, but I've been very surprised that this hasn't taken off. We have actually utilized VDI infrastructure for times where we can't deploy managed machines, and we have to use it. But I'm just kind of surprised it hasn't become a bigger norm yet.
Yeah, let's
I'm running Windows right now.
Oh, you're running your Windows on your Chrome OS device to get the
Right.
Windows version of Zoom, because Zoom on Chrome OS.
Yeah, because Zoom will not
Yeah.
update their Zoom, the client. for Chrome
But they
OS.
do have a new progressive web app.
It's still worse. That's still stupid.
It's still, yeah,
But
it's not good yet.
so this is a little pivot as we come to almost the halfway point from zero touch. Obviously, we know there are ways of doing that. Justine's explained about drop shipping, buy and hold, and Jamf and Intune and the other platforms. But and Steve and then Brian have mentioned about VDIs. Windows 365 was announced obviously a couple of months ago. I know large corporations that are looking at it to be used when you're dealing with the contractor freelance market. We have this job shortage in some industries where it's very difficult to find people, and some people are starting very, very quickly. And obviously, if you've got your traditional laptop setup provisioning model, by the time their contract has ended, that laptop's ready to be delivered by FedEx. So is VDI, Windows 365, Chrome OS Stadia, Mac OS in the iCloud a viable way? And everybody just has, it's assumed that everybody has their own device to run the software that's needed, has their own laptop, desktop, tablet, phone. You could probably sign into Windows 365 on your phone.
I can already see the implications coming through. For example, many of the reasons that teams have either been forced to use Windows machines or demanded Windows machines, depending on where it comes from, is because of some of the software they need. We've all seen the classic financial software, give or take. Microsoft Excel works a lot better on Windows machines than it ever will on a Mac. Conspiracy theories abide about whether that's on purpose or not. That will also may not work as nicely on a VDI machine just because of the current technology behind how VDI operates. Same with like CAD drawings or design pieces. Same with like engineering pieces running virtual constructs. It really depends on performance. And if you make your workforce unhappy, that can also play a part.
Yeah, the thing is, I didn't change OS. You join us here and we've been Chrome OS from the start, which is different to what most of you running, where you would need to argue for a change. And doing that change, obviously in financial services. And we have a customer who is an architecture firm, and they are actually looking into VDI right now. Everyone is most likely getting Mac there, and Windows is running in the cloud with much more powerful devices than they have right now at their architecture firm to run CAD files, to run design, and that's where they are going. And they're actually looking to do this either in Linux or in Windows.
We're working on a similar thing with a customer that's in financial services as well, but this time with Chromebooks and VDI, wherever it's hosted.
I don't know if you guys know, but I work for a financial infrastructure company and we're all Mac. So the idea that you have to use Windows is a little bit crazy to me. But I just feel like the sort of re-rise of virtual machines is like almost like coming full circle, right? Because we went from using virtual machines as a management, like from a management reason, you know, like we can sort of lock these things down and control them a little bit tighter than we can, you know, the physical devices that people are running. And now we're looking at using virtual machines as a way to facilitate easier operations, right? So like people who want choice, people who need choice because of the, you know, the software that they're using or whatever, we can make some different decisions by using virtual machines. I don't know. It just feels like when I started in our community 4.5 years ago now, virtual machines felt very backwards to me. And so it's funny to be sitting here talking about entertaining the possibilities of reintroducing virtual machines into some of our environments in order to facilitate.
Yeah, it is. Some of these things are secular, aren't they? With the technologies that come in and out, or they've been improved. Obviously, the virtual machines from 4, 5, 6, 10 years ago were running off of physical hardware that you would manage and own and have in your data center, and the power of them, the resources available would be limited by what you had and what you could pay for on and the licensing. Yeah, I think it's the certainly with Windows off 365 and some of the partnerships between Citrix and VMware and GCP and Google, or even AWS and their workspaces is, I know a lot of companies, a lot of people that are on Chrome OS, and they'll have an AWS workspace when they need access to a Windows machine to, update the firmware on their GoPro or their, Garmin GPS.
Yeah.
That's when you need a Windows machine to traditionally update the firmware, unless eventually everything will update itself over the wire. The other thing that I think about as we sort of pivot in this conversation, but that's how some of these discussions can go, is the mention of those traditional applications, Excel and other financial software. But if everything is in the browser, if everything is beyond corp, zero trust, you have nothing to run but a browser, and you don't have an app, what are the options there? What do the solutions look like in that eventuality?
My favorite is how in many industries that I've worked in, Chrome is a preferred browser or a suggested browser to use. Chrome, made by Google, is insisted on being used on either a Microsoft or a Apple platform or hardware. The little trio there of compatibilities there, especially since Chrome has its own task manager and refuses to pass data over to either side. It's like you're touching upon the point. It's like the chosen software, either the GoPro updater or Excel. And right to Rosa's point, I agree with everything she just said about, like, there's, whether it be backwards with VDI or why we can't find things that work on a chosen OS. Dominic's point too, I guess. I just feel like sometimes IT doesn't have the deciding factor there. And that could also change the politics or change the site management style there.
Whether we like it or not, many companies have created culture around an OS. That there's a culture around, we're a full Mac shop, or we use Google, or you use Windows, or whatever. We don't use all that other crap. We use Windows. Whatever. There's a true culture built around it.
Yeah,
that's part of the business.
I would never work at an Office 365 org. Let's be real.
I didn't say they were good. I just they do still exist. Law firms.
Yeah, law firms.
I would not take an offer of anyone that uses Office, except if it's to change manage over.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting how you mentioned about Office 365. More people would use. I know I've heard David Politis mention a couple of times, I think, on some webinars of people, asking that question at the interview. What collaboration platform are you using? And people, making decisions on who they work with or for based on those collaboration platforms.
I mean, let's be real. If some candidate comes in, you ask them that, and they say, "Oh, I use Teams." No, they're not getting hired.
Teams isn't too bad. Has its place in some corporate entities. Has its flaws, like many applications does. Many applications do. I have another question to pose to people, unless there's anything anybody wants to say.
So back to what you were saying there, Colin, about the VDIs and stuff like that. One of the examples I'll use is the cost of equipment to run something like that. When you think about it, and I'm using Stadia as an example because it's a system I use all the time at home. Once in a while I have small glitches with it, but people always like, "Oh, this is never going to work." And it's like, I use this as my full gaming machine rig, no issues. And basically I have a Chromecast that's worth $99 and can completely run a 4K image, 60 frames per second. And I sit there and go, what type of hardware could you just carry around with you and just be your identity? Like your phone could technically be your identity. You plug it into any monitor and it's your connection to everything, and it's got enough horsepower to bring a 4K image down, or multiple desktops. You could possibly run one 1080p monitors or one single 4K monitor with a normal 3G, 4G signal. And the hardware costs you start talking about there, the environmental savings of using just the energy you need to use to do what you need to do. And then as soon as you stop using that program, it's turned off. It gets back to that whole cloud base of like how Google runs their search servers. Spin a couple up when you need them, spin them down when you don't need them. And environmental wise, it's like, that's a big thing and starting to be a huge thing of like, how do we cut our carbon by 20%? How do we make sure we're cutting back? And not that a VDI is absolutely the answer, but it helps solve some of those questions sometimes, and moving to a distributed model.
Yeah, it's interesting how you picked up on, mentioned your phones. Ubuntu or Canonical, whoever the makers are of Ubuntu, they had the idea of having the Ubuntu phone that you would plug it into a docking station, and then the full Ubuntu UI would be available. HP did a phone, I think, that would plug in. I know Microsoft have looked at it. And even back in the 80s, there was a prototype of an IBM identity, which was almost like a slab. It was, quite thick, and you could plug it into your laptop and you'd get your OS on your laptop, or you could plug it into a desktop and then you get your OS on a larger desktop with more power. I don't think it ever made it to the market, but it was certainly a prototype. That really does, maybe with VDI technology, whether it is sort of corporate Stadia, Google Stadia for business, you can just plug in your phone. There's an app, and it just plugs into the monitor and your keyboard and everything, and does it that way.
It's basically your gateway to everything that's your identity.
Yeah. Which brings us back to identity.
People render 4K videos on iPhones.
Yeah.
Faster than on Windows machines.
Yeah. And the mention of identity is brilliant, because that's the ideology and the thought about SaaSOps is where you're protecting the identity as opposed to the corporate hardware. In the last sort of 10 minutes, I'm going to bring the question back to Justine and ask about success rate and trust in drop shipping a device to an end user and then what happens if there's a problem with that device during that remote setup. Because we have done some, zero touch deployment tests and had glitches. And thankfully those glitches were with me, a semi-educated user, and I could work through with our Intune admin to try and work out what the problem was. But if it was an end user, it'd be like, expletive, we're going to have to FedEx them a new machine and get them to FedEx this machine back to us so we can fix it. What was your success rate, and were there any failures?
It might shock you to hear this, but we have had no failures since we started working remotely, shipping stuff to people.
With the the zero touch deployment?
Mm-hmm. I think I can think in the 2 years that I've been at Better Cloud, I think twice we've had computers like come to the office and been borked, but that's it. And I think it's just because we do so much Mac stuff. It seems like there's less issues with them. Sorry.
Yeah.
No,
Interestingly,
it's okay.
sorry, go ahead, Rose.
I was just gonna say, I mean, 2 in 2 years is like a really good rate, because I know that like Windows machines and Windows hardware manufacturers, like, I think they probably want to get that good, but they're just not. Like, anytime we have to change models, it's like we're just rolling the dice on.
Interestingly, so I have probably just about everything that Justine has. I just haven't gotten them all lined up for a perfect zero touch deployment. So there's still a little bit of interaction on our end for some parts. All the international stuff that's been the closest to zero touch has been absolutely no issue. It's been the domestic stuff where we still, because it's right there, like, we're not doing zero touch. So, okay, we'll do this and then we'll send it out. And that's where all the bugs have come in, the hiccups and things. For some reason, a random machine just, does its initial enrollment, hits the desktop and does nothing more, and just needs to be wiped and redone, and just can't figure out why.
It doesn't want you touching it.
That all happens domestic and when I'm touching it, or when Dax is setting it up. It's not always just me, so nobody can just blame me for it. But everything else international has been great, and the zero touch stuff has been really great, except for the case with China, where firewalls coming into place and VPNs, and okay, how do you get the VPN to do the VPN? And yeah. So other than that, everything else has been incredibly smooth for anything that's been the closest to zero touch that we can be right now.
And I think, Randy, it's a great point what you said there about if there is ever an issue, most of these are set up as zero touch. So you wipe it, format, and then as it comes back up again, it enrolls itself again. So most of the time, if it's a small glitch, it's fixable by just wiping it.
Yeah. The difficulty is when you have a new hire and it's like, here's day one. Now spend 6 hours on the phone to IT, constantly, rewiping and resetting your machine, trying to work out why, X policy or application isn't being deployed to it correctly. It's not. That's some of the fears, and obviously, doing the same thing globally is very, very difficult. It is the scale. Global zero touch is very difficult with all of the different vendors that you might have to use in different places. You might be using HP in China, but then Dell's in North America or something. Then you've got to have them both set up to be in your autopilot, and you might have multiple vendors and resellers. It does get very, very, very complicated very quickly. So yeah. All right.
I was just going to say different timeframes for like us for our Mac environment, different timeframes for when they actually show up in DEP. So some vendors, when they arrive, when they're delivered, they show up shortly after that. But until then, for some reason, they just aren't in the system. So if you wanted to get it in and turn it around, you can't. You have to wait. So,
right.
Yep. Some of them, they're already done by the time they arrive. Some, it's 24 hours solid from whenever it was shipped. So, yeah.
Yeah. So there's not everything is automated. I guess unless you bought from Apple directly. and had them in your Apple Business Manager as the reseller.
You buy from Apple directly, but don't have a local entity, you're gonna be screwed.
Yep.
That's Apple only lets you buy local if you're local, and they don't let you ship from one country to another, and that's just dumb to me.
Yeah. And some places, won't allow you to pay by wire transfer and be invoiced and have a PO, which some financial departments will dictate, and won't want you to be using a credit card. But I know trying to get an Apple credit account is very, very difficult. They want to just be paying by a credit card. That's why people are using resellers to get Apple stuff, whether it's CDW or whatever, because they'll have those relationships. So
when you can't buy stuff because you have to create an identity in that country, and that identity hasn't been around long enough to really have a financial history, good luck getting credit.
Yeah. We've been through all of that many years ago. It is difficult. So
even though you have like a big corporate entity behind you, like with billions of dollars of funding or whatever, then people like don't trust you. It's like weird.
Yeah. All right. In the last, I guess, 45 minutes, we've gone round, I think, and covered a whole host of different subjects, all to do with us as IT professionals not wanting to touch anything, not wanting to do repetitive tasks, not wanting to be UPS and FedEx additional employees and constantly printing out shipping labels and managing the logistics of that. I've certainly learned and want to consider CDW as we do use them, but I haven't. We don't buy hardware from them. We normally buy sundry items, keyboards and mice, etc. Would consider them for drop shipping stuff. That ship and hold is certainly a good, buy and hold, certainly a good term to ask your vendors about. Any Jerry Springer-esque closing thoughts from others? I know Jesse hasn't said anything, but if you want to...
It might not be Jerry-esque, but Justine, when you're purchasing from CDW, I know Apple has the capability of like Apple Business Manager, that being integrated. I know companies like Dell will do something called Image Assist, where I will actually build a machine image with all the software I have on it within a virtual machine. I then package that up, send it to them, and whatever machine I buy from them, they will slipstream the drivers into that, so I can be ensured that my management software is already installed onto the machine when they turn it on. What does CDW do? Do you know?
All of that. They can certainly handle it.
So is it CDW that handles?
Yeah.
Is it CDW that handles it, or do they work with a vendor and just give them the
CDW.
package?
CDW, they do massive orders of all sorts of stuff, Dell, all that sort of kind of thing. The one thing I will also additionally add for CDW is they've always been good about having non-standard specs. So if your standard is, for example, the engineering laptop is a MacBook Pro 16-inch, but it has to have 32 gigs of RAM, that's not an off-the-shelf standard build. There's a high likelihood that they'll actually have some of those. So in a pinch, when you suddenly run out of stock, it's like, okay, that's going to take 2 weeks to get from Apple. CDW, do you have one? Yep, perfect, great, bam, I'll take it. So they have a lot of those more typical non-standard builds. So they won't have every variation, but they'll have some of the more typical ones.
Yeah,
appreciate that, guy. Thanks.
Yeah, I know that Dell does. You can give them that their image. Obviously, the sending somebody an image, I think, is a harder and slower process because it's going to be locked to whenever you create that gold image and send it to them. So then when you get that laptop, if another Windows big update has come out, you've got to then install that update. I tend to not like images. I do know a lot of companies that work that way. I find it very slow. I do like vanilla Windows out of a box and then applying because that's always going to be the latest version of the OS, and then applying your policies to that.
Including software deployments. Yeah. Remote software deployments.
Yeah.
When you use a vanilla install, then how do you get your management software onto the machine?
So you can give that to CDW and distributors too. You don't have to give them a full image. You can just give them
it'd
the
be
management
just
software
make sure
installer.
software's installed.
Yeah.
Yep. They can also asset tag if that's something that your company does. They can handle all that. They can even get super fancy and etch things and whatever if you want that. They'll do laser etching. They'll brand things, and all at a price, of course, if you want to go up into those tiers. But still, a simple asset tag and out the door for vanilla is super darn cheap, and it really just kind of taken off your plate and done. So, and they do it in a pretty controlled, clean environment. So if you're thinking zero touch as far as disease contact and things like that, they're good about the zero touch. I'm sure they have new information about whatever their standards are, but they've always been in a pretty clean environment anyways, where it's not just, a grubby warehouse and just, there's a sticker, shove it on and out the door.
We've tried moving away from vanilla and tried to get chocolate and strawberry. So
now you're talking Dominic's world with all the flavors.
And Justine said something really great there, which was we do have a welcome package that we need to ensure gets shipped with each one of our new systems. Basically how to turn on your machine, how to enroll, because even though it is set up dead stupid, the user will still find a way to have their machine upside down and typing on their screen if we don't have it in a document telling them what to do, basically.
Yeah.
What I would love, and this would be an amazing utopia experience, is if it was like when you buy an Amazon device with your Amazon account, it knows, that device knows who you are. It has all of your details. It gives you a video tutorial about how to use it when you power it on. If you've ever bought a Fire TV stick, the auto playing video trends,
any of their Kindles, all your books are automatically on it.
Yeah, that would be good. We need. We've mentioned a lot of brand names. None of them are sponsoring us. You can contact us for real endorsements. If you want to replay this and turning it into a drinking game every time you mention CDW, you may. Please reach out to your account manager and mention us. But I've thoroughly enjoyed the last 45-50 minutes of conversation, like we always do every other Friday here at Solve, the SaaSOps Live virtual event. And with that, I will pause the recording, say goodbye to everybody, hang around for the after party and random chats. We'll see everybody in 2 weeks' time.